The market for network automation software is worth billions of dollars a year and growing rapidly, according to a recent report from Appledore Research. But what's driving the growth? Which companies are the market leaders? And how is artificial intelligence, the hottest tech topic of the moment, impacting the sector? Well, to find out, I'm talking today with Robert Curran, consulting analyst at Appledore Research. So, Robert, great to see you again. Thanks very much for joining us today. So the report covers developments in the network automation software market. Is this basically the equivalent of the new generation OSS software?
Yes, indeed, Ray. Thanks for having me on to talk about this topic. Absolutely. We looked at the market as was, 3-4 years ago, and really concluded that the term OSS, which is wide use back then, really wasn't reflecting how operators were changing their behavior and how vendors were responding to what was going on in the marketplace. So we felt it necessary to look at the market with a much more sort of forward-looking perspective, taking into account the factors that were really changing under the surface. Firstly, the move towards more virtualized networks, softwareized networks, the move to cloud, the impact of cloud in general from an architectural point of view and infrastructure level. And really the third was the kind of renewed focus on automation at scale. And really, we played that perspective out onto the market and created a new market taxonomy around network automation software, which we think better reflects kind of what's happening in the market. So even if you look at overall OSS and to some extent BSS spend, headline numbers aren't moving that much, but that kind of masks what's really going on underneath. So that's why we took a view of looking at where the market was going and trying to uncover what was happening in these new areas, these new segments. And it was even really before AI started to have significant impact. So again, that's another thing I know we'll talk about in a moment, but how the market is evolving as a result of that too.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense because there is a lot changing behind the scenes in the way networks are run. So looking at the market from this perspective, which companies are regarded as the market leaders in terms of product portfolios and sales, but also in terms of innovation?
So when we look at the market today, network automation software as a whole, just looking at the top 5 leaders, it's Nokia, followed closely by Huawei, and then we have IBM, VMware, Ericsson. It's an interesting mix. 4 out of those 5 are also feature strongly in the leaders among one segment, which is domain management, which is the largest single segment of the market. And certainly, their position in the market is down to having a lot of appeal with more innovative features that respond better to what operators are trying to do in moving into this new world. So certainly would call those companies out. They are by definition innovators. One interesting aspect that we found in our assessment looking at last year was that the proportion of the market that's being given to other players, not just the leaders, is actually growing. So when we did this 2 years ago, we estimated that figure was about a little over a third of the market. This year, it's more than half of the market. And that suggests that telcos are looking at spend with a wider range of providers, not just the leaders. And that's where you see, the range of interesting companies in that space. Some of them, large and established players, the Amdocs, Oracles, and so on, certainly feed into that category, Netcracker. But then you have people like Rakuten Symphony coming in there, very innovative companies, and then through to people like Cohere Technologies, even ServiceNow, Inmanta. There's a huge range of companies who are innovating and trying to do something new, bring something new to the market, new ideas, and that's it's encouraging to see that telcos are looking at and awarding the business to those kind of companies as well.
Now, the overall sector grew by 42% in just 2 years and was worth more than $6.2 billion in 2022, just last year. Is that a faster pace of growth than you had anticipated?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little bit lower than we had forecast, but not by much. I think we forecast about 6.9, and we're looking at 6.2. Forecasts are always wrong to some degree. I think we're happy that it's in line with what we expected. I think some of the difference might be explained by maybe a little bit of inertia among telcos. Certainly through post-COVID and looking at some of the other areas. I think the general mood in the marketplace is things like 5G, private networks, Open RAN, are all running a little bit slower than people expected. Not massively slower, but a little bit slower. And so I think that certainly post-pandemic, and with the wider economic situation, telcos are looking at what they spend on trying to prioritize, very hard, and make strong business cases for things. So again, let's put it in perspective. Network automation software has grown very substantially. It's certainly the direction of travel is very, very clear. It is a significant market. It is growing, but there are these factors. We can't assume that just because it's a good idea that it automatically will happen. There's still a lot of legacy there, and a lot of, I think, challenges for operators in trying to adopt a new model, embrace some very, very different ideas. Again, the conferences that we've all been to through the last 18 months or so have been full of telcos saying, look, we really have to do something different, and we have to do something fundamentally different, but it's a challenge. So I think that's maybe why we see some of the slight kind of difference in our forecast. But again, looking into the future, this isn't a market that's kind of slowing down in that sense. It's definitely, the traffic is all one way.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle to get in place for these things to move forward. And like you said, that doesn't always happen as quickly as people expected. Now, you broke the market up into a number of subsectors, and the network data management subsector, that grew by almost 140% in 2 years. What's driving such dramatic growth for that particular set of network automation tools?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a reflection of just how data centric this area is becoming. Automation, I think, to some extent, was looked on as being workflow for many situations, in many cases. Actually, what's changing is that data is absolutely central to that, and that's right across the business. Network data, customer data, information about infrastructure. It's all essential information, plus retail, plus external factors, and so on. This is really how the telco of the future will operate. I mean, data is absolutely that central nervous system, of how they can gain efficiency and gain insight. So I think there's a few different things happening there. Firstly, is realizing that the data is essential. So everything about how you collect it, manage it, analyze it, and then feed it back into other systems is becoming, very, very clearly integral to the whole process. I think the second thing is partly as a result of softwarization and virtualization, is that players who previously, were working purely in enterprise IT, enterprise networking space, are now starting to feature in this network data management space. So I think as we've looked at what's going on, where telcos are spending their money, who they're spending it with, that's kind of shown a spotlight on how much is actually being invested in companies to manage this kind of central data backbone. So I think there's a number of different ways this plays out. Some of it is a large portion of it is network optimization related, trying to improve the network, improve efficiency, particularly power efficiency, but all the way through to the customer service side of things. So customer experience in terms of what services are customers having, what experience customers are having in real time, and trying then to constantly kind of tune and adapt. So I think there's a mix of different reasons for why this is becoming, why this has grown so much as an area for us.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. There's so much talk in the operator community about how to, collect and make better use of all the data that the operators have at their fingertips. Now, another hot area is, of course, artificial intelligence, as we already mentioned, and everything about AI is hot right now. And one of the other subsectors you covered in this report is AIOps. What kind of functionality does that cover and include, and how does the Appledore team see this area developing?
So AIOps really references anything that's going to automate by using data and making sense of the data that you've got, particularly in that sort of zero-touch closed loop sort of idea. In terms of functional uses of this, really there's kind of four primary categories. One is identifying anomalies in network data, in network performance and behavior. A second group is predicting kind of a future outcome of some kind, a future failure or a future event, or a threshold breach, something like that. The third is looking at the root cause of problems. Again, trying to correlate information from many different sources and get to the ultimate source. And the fourth one is category of systems which will learn kind of best practice over time, and then be able to recommend that back to engineers and support teams in different contexts. Those are the main sort of areas of functionality that AI, which is largely used as a sort of proxy for machine learning more specifically, but it's still a huge area. And so what operators are trying to do is to improve the ability of networks to heal themselves. Obviously, to improve things like power consumption without compromising service experience. Security is a huge part of this as well. Understanding how to keep networks safe and identify anomalous behaviors. That's massively changed both for telcos and for enterprises in recent years, and even into areas like revenue optimization. Where can I incentivize or run campaigns or offer services with a greater likelihood of uptake? So AIOps really covers a huge range of activities. This is why it's such a significant area within network automation software. I mean, no surprise, we expect this area is going to grow significantly. Even in its current form, we think it's a very nascent market. Telcos are getting their heads around AI and machine learning, and that's even before the likes of the large language models really come into play, the chat GPTs and so on. Those are having a very interesting effect on making people think about what's possible, and so we're going to see that kind of playing out in the coming years. So I think there's no question that in broad terms, AI is going to form a very significant part of how everyday operations function in telco. I think the idea that we're going to kind of turn everything over to the machines tomorrow or next year, that's not going to happen. But we are going to see a steady evolution, not least because so many of the functions for this kind of software are simply impossible for humans. So it's not a displacement opportunity. It's about being able to do things that you want to do and your customers want you to do that just aren't possible any other way. So this is phenomenally powerful technology, and I think as we learn to apply it and exploit it and apply it in the right places, that's going to be a very significant effect on how this market grows.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fascinating area of development, and of course I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there both on the technology development and supply side as well as the network operator side. They're going to look to this for some differentiation in the market as well. So looking ahead now, what are the expectations for the coming few years in the network automation software market?
Yeah, well, clearly, we expect this to continue to grow. I think our basic thesis is that this is attracting more investment away from just feeding the legacy OSS machine, and I think there's a degree of sophistication and a nuance in what operators can do with this newer software that will become increasingly appealing as the industry develops more proof points, more examples, and more evidence of the way you can move the needle through automation. I think these aren't just good ideas; these are very fundamental. I think when we talk about the challenges operators face today, again going back to some of the conferences we've been at over the last year, 18 months, there is a sense that we really have to do something different. We really have to retool in order to pursue growth, to be able to execute much more quickly. So we certainly expect all of the segments that we've identified to grow. I think the other thing is that we expect to see more of those players currently in the other category. Some of whom are very large companies. I mean, the hyperscalers, for example, feature to a limited extent in our current assessment, but the software technology they're providing certainly is beginning to fit into that network automation software category. So again, we expect to see further development of the competitor landscape. I think we're several years away from any serious consolidation across network automation software because there's so many exciting ideas to be explored there. That will come eventually, but it's not where we are now. I think for now it's really a question of innovation, experimentation, and seeing what's possible, and providing getting the proof points and showing the outcomes that are possible with this kind of intent-based orchestration, analytics based, using AI, using the data, and being much more efficient. So it's a one-way trip in that sense towards what's an inevitable future, which is efficient, productive, and delivers great experiences for companies and for people.
Okay, fantastic. And like you said, none of this really happens overnight. This is a pretty long journey, and especially with AIOps, is very early days yet. So lots of really interesting developments to come, I'm sure, and hopefully, we might see some of that investment come back into telecom software again and help to drive further innovation in the market. I mean, is that something you expect to see?
Yeah, it's for those of us who've been in the industry for a little while, it would be fun to see telecom be exciting again from an external point of view. It's always been an exciting business to be in, with the innovation and challenges that we face. But telecom is kind of, as an industry, has sort of slightly lost its way to some degree. And I think the sort of things that companies are doing now and the sort of innovations that vendors are providing, makes it possible for telecom to become an exciting industry again, attractive, and attracting fresh talent in, and being a great place, great industry to work within. We are fundamental to how the world works. There's no question about that. But I think we can do a better job at making that plain and making it an exciting business to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with new terms coming up like the AI native telco, that might help to make this industry that we know and love to be just a little bit more attractive and exciting to the outside world. Okay, great stuff, Robert. Thanks very much for joining us today and talking about what you're finding out at Appledore Research, and look forward to chatting with you again in the near future and seeing you at a few more of these conferences in the second half of the year. So great to see you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for being here. Thanks, Ray.